Are you suffering from staff turnover? Too many lost business opportunities? Is your reputation at risk? If so, you know your workplace culture needs improvement, but determining how to do so and where to start is about as fun and effective as trying to assemble a puzzle with no picture to guide you. Culture Change in a Box is a show that takes you on a compelling deep dive into an effective real-time culture change process so you can begin to feel hopeful and re-energized about your business. And now, here are your hosts for Culture Change in a Box, Chris McClellan and Judy Ryan.
Well, greetings, everyone. It is Chris McClellan, the Bowtie Guy, for another episode of Culture Change in a Box. And if you're hearing the joy in my voice, it's because I was dancing when that music comes on. I just love that music you picked for our podcast, Judy. Isn't that cool?
I love it too. It makes me want to dance too.
Yeah, that's my good friend Judy Ryan from Lifework Systems.
Hello, everybody.
It's great to see you again.
Thank you.
We need to do a couple of video podcasts so they could.
Okay. I'm game.
I'll even wear a bow tie.
Yes, there you go. Maybe I'll wear one too.
Well, because we trust each other enough to do that.
That's right.
And that's the topic of our show today: trustworthiness.
Yes.
So important, isn't it, Judy?
It is crucial. We call it foundational. It's the basis of everything.
It doesn't happen overnight, though, does it?
No. In fact, most people think it sounds like a great idea, but they don't know quite what it entails. And so they're sort of in a murky place with it. Like, well, I want trustworthiness. I can kind of feel when I don't have it. But how do I get specific on pinpointing where it's out of whack and where it could be created really strong? And
that's why you have developed Lifework systems to put these components in place so people can develop it.
Yes, it's one of the areas that we spend a lot of time with clients. We have tools and programs just around the topic of how to develop trust and how to use it whenever there's a relationship issue, how to use it in mentoring, all kinds of things.
Can you hear that? We're doing live radio, so we've got a thunderstorm going on here in St. Louis. So if you hear that rumbling, it's not your stomach. It's not my stomach. Okay.
No, I've been feeding him all year.
We had some good chocolate on the last show. So how do you approach this? How do you, this is such a broad subject.
Yes, in the beginning it feels broad to people because I teach them some component parts of it, but over time I can guarantee you our clients are memorizing because of rote, conversations. 8 values that build trust.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the...
Yes, I will. I love the 8 values that build trust. I continually grow in understanding them in greater depth, but they're things like honesty and straightforwardness. And honesty and straightforwardness, at first glance, could even be thought to be the same, but they're quite different.
Right.
And then disclosure, well, how is that different? And it is. And then receptivity, so how we're taking in information. Also giving recognition. That has a lot of scope to it in itself. What is respect really? And seeking excellence. What does that look like? How do you know when you've achieved that? What does it mean to follow through on your commitments? So that one's a little bit more obvious because it's a specific behavior. So those are the 8 values that create trustworthiness. And if you have any relationship issues with anybody, you can usually trace it back to this isn't happening, and this isn't happening. And that's just my side of the picture. That's not what you're doing.
Because there's always another.
There's always 2 sides to it. So it's very helpful for people to recognize it and have a set of tools they can go to solve the issues that they've realized. So there's the specificity that matters to the clients. And that's why our first clip is on our clients' appreciation of the specificity.
Well, let's take a listen.
Okay.
I do think trustworthiness is important and foundational. I like how in LifeWorks we break it down into what it actually means and that we get very specific information on how to show up as trustworthy. Because if we don't have the same definition, then we can't get anything done. So it really, really helps to all be speaking the same thing. And we go over those 8 values that build trust over and over whenever we talk about LifeWork. So it hammers in. And I just naturally talk to other friends and say, oh, where are you not being this or where are you not being that? Or I talked to somebody today and said, oh, that was so nice. He was so straightforward in disclosing. And it gives everybody hopefully a sense of what what trustworthiness really means.
I believe that's probably one of the basic 101 things you need. If you can't trust somebody, you can't give them a job, expect to get it done. You don't know whether you can take their word for it. To have a good employee, you need to be able to say, can you do this? If they say yes, you don't have to constantly go check back up on them. I think it's the baseline for all of our relationships, whether it's at work or at home or anywhere else. Trustworthiness is happening here. I think a lot of people are a lot more particular about how they answer you now.
Goodness. Oh,
more particular how they answer you.
More than particular. Yes. Yeah.
Because you're more self-aware.
You just took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. I'm reading your mind today.
Yeah. How do you measure trust?
We actually physically measure trust.
Okay.
When we first start with a client, one of the surveys that we give to all employees measures 3 major components. One is trust in multiple ways, and I'll go into that in a minute a little bit more.
Okay.
One of them is alignment. Do all of the employees have clarity and understanding and approval of the company's purpose, values, visions, goals, procedures, and roles? So that's kind of a more system-wide, business-wide look into the organization's systems and how people are actually understanding all of that. So that's alignment. We measure engagement levels. What are the perceptions of the employees around how many of us, what percentage of us are causing trouble, sabotaging, actually working against, grossly underperforming, all kinds of things, and how many of us are C- people that are showing up every day, but we're just going to do bare minimum, and how many of us are fully engaged. So those are the engagement and alignment metrics. But around the trust, what we do is we describe those 8 values, and we ask every person, and sometimes we'll do it between teams as well, because maybe in a particular 2-team or 3-team area, it's how do you feel about that group over there? So sometimes it's done company-wide and between departments, but it would be like this. Chris, here's what straightforwardness is. How important is it to you on a scale of 1 to 10? And let's say you give it a 9. I think it's super important that people are telling me what they want from me, that they're asking for what they want, that they're clear in their expectations.
Very much so.
Very important to me. How well is it happening here? I don't know. I'd give it a 5, right? So that spread is called the trust gap. So a gap is not a good thing. It's the not good thing. So most of the organizations we work with have at least the width of gap that the international community has. And sometimes if they're in crisis, they might have double the gap. And sometimes if they're pretty healthy, they might have a smaller gap. But our intent is to keep smashing down that gap. We have one organization that went from over 14-point gap for all 8 values down to a 2-point gap.
Goodness.
That means that their expectation for how everything should be happening is almost equal to what is happening, which is what we want to help them achieve.
Well, they had a culture change.
They've definitely been having a culture change, and that's a non-ROI kind of measure, but it is associated with other return on investment measures that we take.
I'm going to jump off topic here because you said ROI, return on investment.
Yes.
Because it's you never really see, you don't see a line item in a spreadsheet for finances that measure what is the cost, but you certainly see what negative behavior, lack of trust, what it does cost. Well,
we see it in the non-ROI, but we also do measure the return on investment. So what we're doing with our clients is we're building the performance targets that will show you return on investment. So one of the examples I have is a friend of mine who was a client for years, has taken over a position over 10 nursing homes. And we factored a conservative estimate of how much income is lost from these 10 nursing homes over a year. And it's almost $8 million. Just in turnover, overtime, and overpayment, all associated with staffing and turnover problems. And to completely train her entire organization for 1 year, she would only have to have a 10.5% reduction in her turnover 1 year to be break even with the investment that she made. And if we help her reduce her retention rate by 50%, she'll save close to $4 million.
Wow.
So there are hard numbers, and that's just retention. That's not around billable hours or sales goals or things that are really, truly measurable. So we're doing that. We're building that.
Well, we've got a couple of more examples.
Yes.
Okay. Let's listen.
I know that it's being practiced in ESSA because you see people being forthright with one another, with trusting one another, being completely honest and open and willing to share and hear feedback from their other employees. Another way we know is we do a couple different surveys throughout the length of time that we've had Judy with us, and we've gotten our scores back, and you can tell that based on all of our scores, we're going up in trustworthiness and in all other areas that we measure. This process has taught me to not only trust other people, but to trust myself. So knowing that I'm being 100% straightforward and honest with everyone that I work with, and I expect that in return from them, and I know that I'm getting that because they're getting the same education, so to say, same practice as I'm getting. I feel like everyone in our company sees one another in a totally new light, that we all really get along. We want to be here, we want to be with one another, and we want each other to succeed.
Trustworthiness is huge. For me personally, that's in the blueprint process. It's one of my high values that is there for me, and so that's a big thing for me. I know that it's present in our team because there's less gossip for one, and so whenever there's less gossip, I don't know if it was a huge part of our group before, but it was definitely present, and I just, through the trust gap surveys, that barometer has moved, or that needle has moved. There's less gossip, there's more openness amongst the teams. A lot of times whenever there's no trust, right, we're not going to be open, and so trustworthiness is definitely present. Is it perfect right now? No, but it's a process, and then we're heading in that direction. So definitely feel that we can see that evidence. We've got a few different sub-departments within our group, and it's very beneficial that we're all on the same page. We can all speak the same language, and so there's some things that come out of this that we've all been able to say, this is happening, and we need to have a disclosure conversation around that. And so just knowing that we're all speaking the same language is the best way for me to say that, and are on the same page, commitment level has been super, super helpful.
Judy, a lot of great examples there, but I guess a question that really comes to my mind is, what is the most obvious way that people break trust?
Well, one of them was just mentioned, which is gossip.
Gossip.
Right?
I wondered,
Yeah. And the other one that's more obvious is not following through on commitment. So those are real kind of no-brainers in a way.
Right.
But there are lots of ways that we break trust, and it's mostly in ways that we don't even realize we're breaking trust. And probably one of the biggest ways we break it is by not being aware of how we make people into objects. One of the values is respect. Mm-hmm. And what respect really means to us is that I am recognizing that you're a unique, separate person with your own aspirations, dreams, values, and wants and needs, right? And if as soon as I forget that you are and that you're to be honored for that, I've broken trust. And that could be so subtle, right? It could just be I forgot your name, or I'm not giving you eye contact, or I'm not listening to you well. And it's just one of 8 ways that I could kind of violate that trust with you, but it's so subtle. Mm-hmm. So even though there are some real obvious ways, there's some ways that are not quite so obvious, more through our passivity. So I think we've got another segment.
We've got another segment, sure.
It is happening here more so than it was before, and I feel it's extremely important. If I don't feel a trust between the person that I'm working with, then I constantly have that doubt in the back of my mind whether or not it's going to get done, or whether or not I have to follow up on it, or be concerned with the way they carry out what I've asked them to. The difference that I've seen is knowing that I can trust someone, I don't have to spend time checking up, and they have accepted that responsibility, and they are accountable for that, so I no longer have to worry about it.
Actually, kind of an interesting example, because when somebody is not being trustworthy, mm-hmm. Are we being trustworthy by addressing their lack of trustworthiness, right? So it's easier for us to point the finger at them. Well, look at how they're not following through, or I have to micromanage them now, right? Mm-hmm. Where really, if we're building trust, we're addressing that elephant in the room. So it's kind of one of those things, if we're going to point a finger at somebody around, well, you're not being trustworthy, you do always want to look at, am I letting you know how I feel about that? Or am I just going to go around you quietly micromanaging you instead of addressing it with you? Does that make sense?
How do you build trust within a culture?
Well, a lot of it is actually teaching people very direct, specific tools. One of them, for example, is just directly talking about all the understandable reasons why people gossip and how it works against their trust and how to help them make commitments not to do that activity and to promise each other that they're going to come to each other when they have an issue. Now, imagine how scary that is if you don't feel equipped, right?
Exactly.
So now you've made this promise, you better get yourself equipped, right? And we help them be mentored and supported through that so that it's almost like they can't avoid it even if they want to. I mean, we've had people that have been diehard until just recently where now they're saying, okay, I'll drink the Kool-Aid, you know. Okay. And what happens is that regardless of whether they consciously think they don't want the culture change, they know the words. Like you'll hear somebody say, do you think that's other directed or self-directed? And they're like, well, I guess it could be other directed. Like they know what all that means. They can't not know it. So part of the way we help bring trust in is we saturate the culture with the information and the support and the tools and the repetition and the practice so that people can't not know it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So we've got a couple more examples we want to play.
Yeah.
Yes, I think trustworthiness is important as a foundational piece. And now that I know what builds trust from Lifeworks, I know even more how important it means and what we mean when we're talking about trustworthiness. It doesn't mean that you obey me completely, and it doesn't mean that you tell the truth and hurt somebody. It means something much more broadly and more important. And how I know now if it's not being shown is if it doesn't feel right. I don't just accept that, oh, that's just the way this person is, or that's just the relationship, or we just don't get along well. I can go further than that now because I know it's totally possible for anybody to have trust. And I know, you know how there's diagnostics, like somebody asked about the symptoms? Because I know the 8 values that build trust, I know what symptom is being shown, and I know what the treatment is to address it. It's a lot different than just having a vague sense of I'm not getting along well, or or assigning them some kind of motive that might not be true. They might be acting that way because I'm not showing up in some way, or they might not know that I want something for more trust. So having that spelled out gives a lot more distinct actions that I can take to build it up again. So I do know immediately when it's not working, and I see it everywhere now, and I can make it better. I do know that trustworthiness is getting better here because I don't have the sense of not getting along well with anybody, or I don't have a sense of tension with people. And I know on my team, when we mentor, I can ask them which relationship is not at a 10. And I think that people are saying they're a 10 when they're really at an 8. I'll be honest, I think the bar's kind of low, but nobody is at a 2 or a 3. And if they are, they're willing to do something because they know what to do. And it's very, very helpful to be able to walk through that. And everybody can feel a tension when they're not getting along well, or when you don't want to make eye contact, or when you think, oh my God, so-and-so is in that meeting or in that room and I don't want to go in there. That means that trustworthiness is not present.
This process has taught me to not only trust other people, but to trust myself. So knowing that I'm being 100% straightforward and honest with everyone that I work with, and I expect that in return from them, and I know that I'm getting that because they're getting the same education, so to say, same practice as I'm getting. I feel like everyone in our company sees one another in a totally new light, that we all really get along. We want to be here, we want to be with one another, and we want each other to succeed. So with my direct supervisor, Erin, I feel more able to come to her with any issues that I have without fear of being struck down or being judged by my questions or my concerns. With my peers, Kristen and Jared, I feel more comfortable with them. I feel like we're the team and leading this company to the culture change that we're trying to thrust into our society.
Goodness, there's a lot there.
Yeah, I love that statement where she said, I just don't write people off anymore. I know I can learn how to get along with anyone. That is a side benefit when you do this culture change, is that people start realizing what I thought was hopeless with somebody no longer feels like there's that barrier.
And there's something else that she said that it just stuck right out. I mean, there's no gender variance when it comes to this.
No, there's no age barrier. So, it's all conjecture in our head that we just can't get along with certain people. It's not real.
And we've talked earlier in the show about the 8 values. Mm-hmm. How does this all apply?
part of it is just people really deeply understanding what each one is. There's a comment coming up here that I love. It's a little story about recognition. So recognition isn't just giving people approval, like compliments and appreciations, although it includes that. And this example has some of that in it. But it's also recognizing how our differences are valuable, how we need everybody in the room, because, if we don't have this group, we're missing something. If we don't have this group, we're missing someone. And it might be that we're very varied, but if we don't have that appreciation for those differences, we're not truly giving recognition, right? We're
so
denying.
important.
Yeah, so respect, not making people an object, doing recognition. And this next story is stellar around recognition.
I was not getting along well with another department. My heart was not in the right place, and there was a lot of blame and putting down, and I used one of the principles in Lifeworks and got some people rallied up, and we did a Secret Santa for them because they do wonderful work, and just because my mindset isn't right doesn't mean they don't deserve it. So we did a Secret Santa, and then the next year they gave us a Secret Santa, totally surprised. And I remember we were all sitting there afterward thinking, if you had told us that we would be exchanging this kind of recognition and appreciation for each other, we would have bet against you. We could have never imagined it. And it's never perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, but there's a lot more hope that things can always get better, and that it's a lot more comfortable to think the best of other people and work toward that than to just write them off as, oh, they're just so-and-so or they're just such and such. It's a lot more inspiring to be surrounded by a culture where we're trying to figure out what they really want and what we're not giving and what we need to do. As part of the Secret Santa, we gave them a list of affirmations of things that we appreciated about them, and later on they told us that they had framed it and put it up and told their department about it. I didn't know that until like a year later, so it was really powerful.
I bet you it was very powerful.
Yes. And that was an example where she was examining the relationship and was looking first at where she was breaking down in her trust. And one of the ways she saw was, I'm not recognizing their value. I'm only seeing where I don't like them. I'm not looking for where I do like them. And that's what prompted her to take action into recognition, which has completely turned things around. And
she looked internally.
She looked internally first, but she very specifically pinpointed that particular value, and then was able to motivate herself to move into action on it. And those two things together, awareness and action together, are truly game changers.
It's quite a benefit to the whole process.
Absolutely. Yeah, do you want to go ahead and hear a little bit more? Because I think the thing that I want people to know is that when there's trust, there's that place where we can enter into vulnerability, which to many people feels like a dirty word. But Brene Brown, who's well known in the world of vulnerability and shame, talks about how deeply joy comes through being ourselves and being authentic, and yet we're terrified to do it because we're afraid people aren't going to like us, right? So here's just a couple of people talking.
I think the most challenging thing for me personally has been learning that it was safe to share. I would have probably been a little bit more hesitant to maybe talk about my, not necessarily feelings, but maybe challenges or some insecurities that I had with job-related things. And now I feel like I'm in a safe environment to be able to share with people and say, I need some help with this. And also at the same time to offer help when I hear somebody else struggling. I don't believe prior to Lifeworks that people really trusted each other. I think that we lost some people. Maybe good people didn't stay because they didn't feel maybe they were being heard, or maybe people just weren't able to get through to them. I don't know, but I don't think because I think because we didn't have the communications tools that we now have, people couldn't communicate. They didn't know how. They couldn't get their ideas across, and there was a level of frustration. I think also because people weren't forthright and they didn't talk openly with each other, that made you guarded. and it made people not trust somebody. You can't work in an environment where you don't trust people. It's not that anybody here was untrustworthy in the past. I just think that people now know that I can be honest and I can tell the truth. In any organization, you have to have trustworthiness. If you don't have trustworthiness, then there's going to be a guardedness among the employees. I know we have trustworthiness here because everybody's so open. People are open to share knowledge. And when people share knowledge, that says to me, I'm not worried you're going to learn or know more than I do. People are okay to ask questions because it's indicating, previously I think people might be afraid to ask questions because others might think I don't know as much and my job might not be safe. But I think because people do have this open relationship with each other with knowledge, that it's just a great two-way street.
It's vital to the life of any person or organization. It makes me think of when you leave home and your parents say, you always know you can go back there and you're safe. When you build an environment that's trustworthy, you know that there are situations that you get into that you can open up and know that it's not going to be used against you or it's a negative, that it's okay to speak your mind, because if somebody else is maybe a little hesitant, it allows them to say, well, they are comfortable opening up, I can do the same thing. And so when you do that, you get the best out of your people. I've been in situations where I've shared my ideas. If I say to somebody, don't repeat this because it's something I'm trying to do, and it's not something I want to put out there just yet because I want to figure out maybe some different approaches, or I get their feedback, there isn't any mistrust. I don't feel like that at all. I feel like when they talk about trust, that they allow me to be trustful and they are trustworthy with me.
Goodness, you can't really underscore how important having trust in the workplace is.
Yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, we had so much trust in this group that 15 people volunteered to do this interview and answer 12 questions because they feel so excited about what we're doing. And part of it is because they have the trust. Some of them were shy. Some of them were people that didn't feel well that day, but they have really grown in being more vulnerable, taking their walls down, being able to work together as a team. And it's really been about them doing the work.
And what a competitive advantage that is for organizations.
Yeah, I don't think people really realize how much they're losing. Like that one woman said, I think we lost people before.
That was so important.
Yeah. So just being able to even have the reputation as a trustworthy company, or the feeling people have when they walk in the department and they feel the trust that has been built. Yeah. It's an amazing advantage, and I don't think people realize it.
Well, we've just got one short clip to play before we go.
So I firmly believe trust is the foundation of any relationship. That's what I've always, that's what I've learned, and that's what I really embrace. And it's really apparent that trust has been built from when I started working with ESSA until now. Really, people feel more comfortable talking with one another about situations that might have been more uncomfortable before. And also just myself, I'm able to communicate special things with my superiors, things that I would have found more challenging before.
Trustworthiness should be a basis of any relationship, whether it's work relationships or personal. I think most people are trustworthy. I think there's good relationship between people, but if anything, this Lifeworks is just kind of bringing it out more and is actively focusing on it.
I guess we just can't emphasize the importance of developing trust in all components of our life, just not in the workplace, but in our personal lives and our families, siblings.
Yes.
It doesn't happen overnight.
Well, and the interesting paradox of it is we think it's all about trusting others, but in reality it's becoming a trustworthy person that builds a strong core in us, which allows us to have fortitude and courage and determination to face life. and to do well in life. So it's such a weird thing that we are always thinking it's out there that the danger is. And in reality, it's just really shaping up our own core and being a trustworthy person.
It's got to come from within.
Yes. And it then is reflected in the relationships that you're in.
I'm reminded of a quote from Mother Teresa: there could be no more hurt, only more love.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I think that is exactly what you're conveying here through your terrific work at Lifework Systems. Judy, it's just great to be a part of this. I'm learning so much.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I was kind of blown away. I'm so glad we've had a chance to share some of these comments with the audience, because I think it speaks louder to hear about their life and their experiences and what they're going through.
Very much so. And tell our listeners how they can find you.
You can find me on our website. You can find all of us on our website at lifeworksystems.com. And you can also check out some of our samples of training on getmytrainingspecials.com. And you can give us a call at 314-239-4727. We'd really like to hear you and talk with you and maybe sit down with you if we can and get to know you.
And we are creating culture change in a box.
We are. Yeah.
Well, Judy, we just need to keep doing this more.
I'm up for it.
Well, that does it for this episode of Culture Change in a Box. I'm Chris McClellan, the Bow Tie Guy. I'm creating a life to love by being with awesome people like Judy Ryan from Lifework Systems. Culture Change in a Box is a part of the Whole Care Network. Check us out online at wholecarenetwork.com. We'll see you for another episode real soon. Bye-bye.